Let's start with Kate. Kate, do you want to share your story?
Of course. Thanks, Shipra, for the awesome intro. Let me share my screen and start my story. Um, from moving about like from some things from IC to lead and so on. So I believe many of you thought of moving somewhere in your career, and the path is not usually super straightforward. And it wasn't for me as well. I still remember the questions I asked myself. So, do I want to lead? Do I want to be hands on? And actually, how to find the way for myself to be happy when I wake up every morning. And I will tell you about my story and the challenges I accepted when moving from IC to lead, and how I got for them. So, hey, my name is Kate. I'm the product design lead for growth at Miro right now. Beyond that, I'm also Russian. Yeah, so you can call me Katya. I'm electronic music lover, I'm bike rider, cat lover, word explorer. And today I want to share my story with you about my path that took me 4 years from junior IC to design lead here at Miro. Some kind of hard questions I had to ask myself to make a choice, and the experimental approach that helped me find the way, some of the challenges I accepted in transition, and some tips that helped me smoothen my path, and I believe they could be helpful for you as well. And let's start from the very beginning. I joined Mira 4 years ago, and that time product design was called UI UX design, and Mira was called real-time board. So if you remember, real-time board plus one in chat, so we will know you. And I joined as a 63rd team member, and I was extremely passionate, at the same time scared a lot. But as a junior designer, you do mostly pretty clear stuff. You create buttons, then models, then screens. 100% of your work is focused on craft. So I just did that. And after some period of time, I uncovered business aspect behind design. So I started to ask myself, okay, how my design solutions are influencing business metrics, or how can I inform my design to make better solutions, or what's the success looks like of my solutions. And when I uncovered this business aspect behind design, I was thinking about transitioning to product manager, and I believe I'm not the only one in this room who was thinking about that. And this was one of the moments, and actually the first one, when I started to think about my true aspirations, why I do design, actually, how to find the answer. And the answer that time was clear for me, that the thing that I enjoyed the most was about craft and tangible outcomes that you can see and share. And that's why I decided to move on in this field. And that time it became clear for me what I was missing at the same time, and this was about people. So next I thought of how can I integrate people aspect as much as I can to my day-to-day work. So I started practicing user research, and frankly, I spent 1 year on user research. I conducted more than 100 interviews, and I was so focused on that I was thinking, okay, maybe I should be user researcher. Why not? And also I was thinking about how can I integrate people into my work. So I started project management in some design projects, and also I was thinking how can I connect business and design together. And I found this connection in growth team, where we create a lot of stuff for the business. So everything was fine, but after some amount of time, a kind of storming happened with me, because I was thinking, okay, where should I go next? Should I continue growing in the design like craft, or should I go somewhere else and try management, for example? And the rest part of this story will be focused on this storming period of time. And what was clear for me, even that time, that becoming a manager is not the only way to grow in a company. And many companies have competitive like salary ranges and great system for both IC and management tracks. So the story shouldn't be about money, and it wasn't. Also, individual contributors can influence strategy and business, and as well as managers. So the story is not about impact and power. The story is about you. And the first kind of simple question, but at the same time super hard one, that I asked myself: what do I really want? And two directions became clear for me. The first is, do I want to design solutions largely by myself, or do I want to get to them by empowering the team? And to make it visible, the first story is about IC track, the second one is about lead. So I needed to understand where to go. And as a researcher, I did some comparison between like two roles and identified some differences between them. So you can see that as an IC designer, you produce solutions. It's clear. As a design lead, you don't do that. You provide direction. It's a shift in mental model. As an IC designer, you manage your time mostly. As a design lead, you need to manage time of multiple people or teams or sometimes streams. As an IC, you influence some processes. As a design lead, you take care of them, you own them, you need to organize them properly. And even with this like comprehensive approach, it's still not clear where to go. It's difficult to make this decision. And what I did was that I experimented with that first. So I approached it as an experiment first. And this is super helpful because you can actually try out some stuff, understand if it's yours, if it's not yours, and even design it as an experiment. So first start with why. Identify the problem you're trying to solve with this transition. Discuss with your manager with the clear timeline. So how much time you want to take for trying out being a lead. Like 6 months, usually enough to see if you feel comfortable or not, and it can be attached to the performance review cycles and so on. So also align on goals and expectations as well as success criteria to make the final decision. And one more thing is that people are not nominated by like to be leaders. People become leaders organically, and this transition should be super smooth and conscious. And first is important to start with why, and it can be hard, but try to answer these questions and be honest with yourself. Like, what are your true aspirations? What are you ready to trade off, and why? And important thing here is that the answers shouldn't lie in ego. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish this stuff, but it's it's just dramatically important to do that. And after some thinking and answering these questions, you can get a kind of a mess of different stuff in your mind, and it's okay. It's absolutely fine. The next step is to figure out what are the main things you're mostly interested in right now, what's important for you right now, and just highlight them first, and then connect the dots between them. And that time I realized that professional growth is super interconnected with your personal growth. And then I also started practicing psychotherapy as well as psychoanalysis. And this key to self-awareness helped me connect the rest of the dots. And I found my interest and aspirations into things. First is behavioral design, which I practiced for years in the growth design. And this is the field where I can apply psychology with design and do that. The second thing is about people management, where my self-awareness and as well as psychology can help me build and manage the team. So yeah, this kind of self-awareness helped me find the way to go next. And when I started this experiment, I made a lot of mistakes and accepted a lot of challenges. So I will tell you about some of them, not all of them, or we could sit here for hours. So one thing that can be challenging for new people and leaders is how to put hands away and start leading people, because coming back to the root cause and your aspiration to create tangible outcomes, it's hard to get rid of it. And the thing is that design is not going anywhere from you. The shape of design is changing. So you design by providing direction, not solutions, and other people are accountable for the solutions. And then you start asking yourself, okay, if I don't create design, what is the end result of my work? Because I don't have anything. And here, you need to shift the mindset, actually, because you need to look at your success, not of individual, but as a team. And the success of your team is the measurement of your success. And yeah, if you're a new leader, sometimes it happens then you do both, you do IC and management, and it's super hard to combine. It depends on the situation, it depends on priorities, but it's hard. And my learning was to hire people if you don't have them. If you don't have a team, you need this team to make it sustainable, to make it successful. Because if you do both IC and management, you are doing neither well. And to make it sustainable, you need people. And this is another challenge with hiring, because if you have never tried hiring before, it can be super hard, because you need to make hard choices. You need to say no. You need to say yes. You don't understand when to say yes to people. And the learning for me was that you don't need to be afraid to hire more experienced people than you are. And even you need to double down on areas which you are not good at a team, and hire people who can do this better. And when you have a team successfully, when you hired some people, you realize that hiring was not hard, that now it's much harder to lead this team, because you need to do a lot of things first time, and share some constructive feedback and challenge people directly. And what was difficult is to separate emotions from people, from situations. When you make some decisions, at the same time, stay human and show emotions when needed. And this is one of the areas I'm still trying to improve at. It's always work in progress. And yeah, finally, some principles that help me move through this journey and help along the way. So first is to approach it as an experiment, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, reflect on them, and iterate, do better next time. The next thing is important to learn how to unlearn, because the shift in mindset is crucial. From IC to management, you need to unlearn a lot of stuff to learn new. And a lot of things will be new. It's okay. And you don't know how to do them. If you find yourself in this situation, do as you can, because the level of anxiety increasing, and just to calm down, treat it as an experiment and do as you can. And together with these 3 tips, I wanted to share with you 3 books from amazing women leaders who actually inspired me to step in this journey. So I hope you will find them useful as well. And if you find yourself in this journey and you have some questions and you would like to discuss your challenges, feel free to find me on LinkedIn and write me. I will be happy to stay connected. Yeah, this is it from my side.
Thanks for sharing that. I know there's some questions there, and then also some requests to share the deck. So we'll work with Kate to figure out how to do that. And we'll get to your questions in a Q&A at the end. So keep typing them in and then we'll collect them. So thanks for that question. Right, I'll go next. So you guys, my name is Shipra and I'm coming to you from San Francisco, although we'll soon be in Amsterdam. Let me share my screen. Unlike Kate's really wonderful, thoughtful, mature process of moving from IC to manager, my journey was a little bit more chaotic with more ups and downs. So one time my boss asked me if I wanted to be head of design. And I was only sort of 4 years out of grad school. I'd been sort of an individual contributor. I was at this startup for a year at the time that my boss asked me to be head of design. And it had been like a wonderful year. I was in the space of thinking, I'm amazing. I was happy. I was productive. I found problems and solved problems that led to 20% revenue growth. It was amazing. And so when my boss asked me if I wanted to be head of design, I was really flattered. I was like, what? You think I can do this? Yeah. And I thought I should say yes. And I said, of course. I said, yes, of course, I'm going to be head of design. I was terrible. I was terrible at that job. It was so bad. So I kept doing what I'd been doing to be successful. Like I kept doing design QA, filing Jira tickets, going to sprint meetups. And all I thought my job was as head of design at the startup was to hire people, which I did. So I went back to my grad school and hired some people out of that alumni list. And I thought I was doing a great job. But I really wasn't. I thought I was going to be not a micromanager. That was my management philosophy at the time. I was 4 years out of grad school. I didn't know what I was doing. But I thought I was going to be not a micromanager, which meant I barely spoke to my team. I didn't know their blockers or ambitions or what they thought about our strategy. I didn't establish design operations or a research practice or a content design practice. I didn't really think about the cohesive end-to-end experience. I just let people do whatever they were doing. And honestly, having worked in startups so far, all my life, little life, so far, I had never really had a design manager, and I didn't know what a design manager did. So I was really failing. And I could feel it, I could sense it. I could sense that the team didn't feel cohesive and we weren't going anywhere as a design org. So instead of quitting, I lobbied my boss at the time, who was the head of product, to hire a head of design externally. So I could go back to doing what I knew I could do, which was going back to doing design. And so I went back to IC, I stuck it out, I slowly kind of went back to business. And my confidence as a manager had really taken a hit. I thought management was not for me. I was terrible at it. And that I could never be a design manager. That I was, I just kind of decided that was not for me because of this 6-month terrible experience. But I did manage again. So the next time I took on a management role was 4 years after my first attempt at it, which was terrible. The next time I took on a manager role, I was a more seasoned IC. I was leading projects with other designers and PMs. I knew what it was like to not do all the work myself, but to delegate and to know that other people will do work that's not going to be exactly what I did, but it's going to be just as good as what I would have done. And so I'd gone through some of those kind of that journey of giving up and letting go. So yeah, so I went back to being a manager, And this time when I went back to being a manager, I went with a beginner's mindset. I knew this was a different role, that I wasn't a designer, and that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I went in and surrounded myself with coaches and mentors. I went in rethinking how I spent my day. And I felt really good. I felt really calm. And I felt, excited to learn a new skill. I hadn't gone to college to be a manager. I'd gone to college to be a designer. So this was new. This time, I realized what being a manager was. It was about learning to say no, for instance. Uh, and I learned I had a really hard time saying no before then, but this is like a side story. I learned how to say no by actually I was dating online at the time, and I decided I would say no to all the people I didn't want to date anymore. So instead of ghosting them, I would practice saying no or practice rejecting dates. And like that helped me kind of get better at just saying no in all aspects of my life, including work. Um, I also realized like being a manager was ensuring everyone on my team was set up for success. Like Kate mentioned, like it's about the success of your team. Uh, and the one moment when I really grew as a pretty fairly sort of young manager was when I hired a super senior IC. This person, this designer, was um, technically much better than I was, had a lot more experience than I had. Uh, and this is very common in engineering orgs to have your 10x engineer who like is not a manager, but it's not very common in design. It's getting more common. I remember hiring this person and thinking, well, what do I have to offer? What can I offer this person? Um, and having sort of that imposter syndrome moment. But what I realized after a few months of working with her was that what I could offer was not technical design critique, but it was just making sure she was in the right place in the organization, working on the right projects, and that I introduced her to the right cross-functional partners for her. And what I could give her was that introduction to the head of sales when she wanted to switch to a different role or try different paths in her career. Those are the things I could offer her, and it wasn't like design critique per se. So that's my journey as a manager. It's like learning to 10x my impact. I felt pretty good. I was learning, I was growing, and I was pretty effective. Um, and then as things happen, we like get really comfortable, and then we start getting bored. And I was starting to get bored of like spreadsheets and OKR meetings and hiring and like this broad and shallow perspective on the product that we were building. And so I quit. Well, actually, I hired my replacement and then I quit. And when I quit, I asked myself, well, what do I really want to do? Um, when do I feel the most effective at how I spend my time? Uh, and I realized that what I missed was that deep, intimate connection with launching products. You know, when as a designer, you put something, you ship something, you switch that feature flag, and you know all the flaws in your design, you know kind of all the ways in which it could fail, but you still ship it, and you're waiting for that data to come in to see how users react and how users are using it. I really miss that moment. And I wanted to go back to that. So I quit and I started my own consulting practice. And I said, this is it. I'm not going to manage anyone. I'm not going to attend any meetings that I'm not running. I'm only going to attend meetings that I run. And this will be perfect. So that was my dream. I launched my consulting practice. It kind of, yeah, we did a few different things. It was a very exploratory stage of my career. And then at some point, I realized, wait a minute, even as a consultant designer, I ended up doing some of the management tasks. So one of my clients hired me to be an interim sort of design leader while the actual design leader was out on parental leave, or that I was coaching a founder on how to hire their first designer. and help them hire their first designer and like help them kind of integrate the design process. Or I was working with companies to help them change their product development process to use design thinking. So I ended up kind of doing a mix of this IC work and management work anyway. And I decided to stop fighting it and embrace the fact that management and empowering others is something that the world is asking of me. And maybe this is what I can offer right now, where I am. So that's where I am. I recently joined Miro as a design leader. I don't know what the future holds for me. I'm sure in 5 years, I'll be back here saying, oh my God, I want to be an IC again. And that's just fine. So if you're like me and can't make up your mind, I say try management, get support. It's a different job. It's not being a designer, and that it's okay to switch. Anyway, that's my story. And I'll hand it off to Case for his thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, thank you, Shipra. That was great. And actually, that pendulum between IC and manager, I can completely relate to that, because it's been, I wouldn't say a struggle, but I've never been able to make the choice between the two for the 25 years that I've been in design. So for me, the question between manager or IC has not really been an either or question. I always tried hard to not lose the individual contributor in me, because I really like the designer's craft, the problem solving, the mastering also of design skills, like keeping pace with the tools as they develop. I love being there, and I've had a few times then becoming a manager, you get just too far detached from actual product work. So hi, I'm Kees. I am currently head of core product at Miro. I'm also residing in Amsterdam. And as I mentioned, I consider myself first and foremost a product maker, but have a few other identities as well. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 girls. I'm a semi-professional athlete, and I'm also a house builder at the moment. And as I mentioned, I've been in design for over a quarter century. And when it comes down to career choices or career development, I've been planning that less than maybe what Kate shared, and I've always more or less followed my intuition and my curiosity that led me to to a lot of paths that I had not expected up front. But yeah, let me rewind a bit on my journey, and I'm using a little roadmap of all the job titles that I collected over the years as the guidance here. So I graduated in 1992, and that is probably before a lot of you on the call here were born. So that reflects a little bit my age and maturity in the industry. I was trained as an industrial designer from the Delft University of Technology, and for my graduation project, I designed and built a prototype of an electric scooter. So at the time, this was all about physical product design, like classic 3D physical mass-produced product design is where I started. And though I used quite some software tools in the design process, I was not really aware at the time that there was even such a thing as designing software products. But soon after starting my career, I got much more interested in designing software. And I was quite amazed by what software could do and the potential that software-based products could bring. So I transitioned myself into an interaction designer. And at the time, I worked at a small design agency in the Netherlands that did all sorts of prototypes for and product design for phone companies and like companies that were early in their software journey. And I invested a lot in learning and building my individual contributor design skills in that domain at that time, because there was hardly there wasn't much around like a lot of that stuff that is very common today had to be invented at that time, which was quite fascinating. So I learned quite a bit of coding, prototyping, also what it means to do fast iterations of a product was fairly new. User testing, which was very in its early stages, and learned a lot by doing. And then I got a bit more serious about software design as I felt there was so much more to learn. And I thought the best place to actually do that would be at a technology company in the US. So I moved to Microsoft in 2000 to become a product designer. And I was really happy to learn that software applications were already considered products at that time. Because even today, that is not obvious for everyone. And so being at Microsoft really kind of accelerated my experience and my learning. It was at the time and still a highly professional technology environment, and designing and building products for MSN and later also for Windows was just a huge and huge opportunity, because the user base is global, it's running in the billions, so it was super exciting to be part of that. Most of my work was still individual contributor work, but my manager at the time really encouraged me to develop my what he called natural leadership. Now, I wasn't really aware I had any of that, so that was kind of an eye opener. And he really pushed me, and I was asked to more frequently present in front of senior stakeholders, to collaborate with architects and people with a very high status in the company, and group product managers. And I'm still very thankful that at that time that manager pushed me quite hard out of my comfort zone. It was really not fun actually to be in that place at that time, and I was freaking out time and again. But it was a very important experience that took away a lot of my fear for taking on more responsibility and go into areas where you had not been before. So as a result, I became soon thereafter a design manager, and next to my individual contributor work, started managing a small team of 3 designers and a technology and a tech writer. And some of these people, they had been for years at Microsoft, and they were much older than me. And it was really kind of challenging to consider them, or to them considering me their boss. And it took, again, like a couple of years, I guess, to really start feeling comfortable in such a setting, and understanding that even if people are more mature and more experienced and older than you, that you can still coach them and help them and grow and reflect on their work in a meaningful way. So that was Microsoft. Then fast forward to Frog Design. So I moved to an agency, from a product company to an agency. I was really curious what it would be like to be more in a kind of a consultancy setting rather than in a product company. And as a creative director, my role really expanded from just designing and team management. There were like a lot more hats that you have as a creative director. Suddenly I had to go into sales, like convincing customers that they would need to buy our service, or into account managers, like keeping angry customers happy and make sure that they stay on board as a client, but also to business owner, becoming like partly responsible for running a profitable agency. Then suddenly all becomes all these kind of additive elements of your job. And also as a people manager, I learned a lot during that time. I figured you need to be, and I think Kate referenced also to this, you need to be half psychologist to be able to deal with and understand and help a wide array of very strong-minded individuals, what designers typically are, and really turn them into a team. So when that responsibility expanded further, I started collecting more fancy job titles and moved on to become an executive creative director. And one of my jobs became founding a new studio for Frog in Amsterdam. And again, this was a fantastic learning experience, because you need to again lead to develop skills that you didn't know people could need at any point in time. And this was also an opportunity to build a team from the ground up. So as Shipra also mentioned, like, okay, now you have a blank canvas, you need to start hiring people to collect the team. And that was fantastic. We grew that from like 3 settlers to a team of 40 in less than 2 years. But again, after creating many concepts and innovation strategies in consultancy for others, I decided I would like to work at the product company again. And I joined TomTom, and I've been working there for almost a decade prior to joining Miro. And again, I picked up various job titles. I started as a principal design architect because I wanted to take some time deliberately away from management, and I had a great time designing new interfaces for navigation devices, and it was pretty cool. But quite soon after, the existing head of UX design left, and for some reason all eyes were on me. So I decided to move into team management again and became TomTom's head of UX design at the time, managing a team of about 30 designers and researchers and writers again. Then after a couple of years, events took a really new course, and I got the opportunity to really move beyond the domain of design. And I was offered a leadership role to start leading a new venture in TomTom around sports watches, like GPS sports watches and wearables, as a VP product unit. And this was quite awesome because the product scope was very broad, including web application, mobile application, but also hardware and device UI on that hardware. And suddenly I was responsible not only for design, but also for product managers and hardware engineers and software engineers, and a team of more than 100 plus people across offices in the UK, the Netherlands, Belgrade, and Taiwan. So it got to, again, like a very different dimension. But again, the principles remained very much the same. Like as soon as you're in management, it is all about team building, understanding people's ambitions, understanding their career, their problems, helping them, being a sounding board, listening very carefully and synthesize your views on that and bounce them back. I think that's in the end what it comes down to, and then scale at some point doesn't really matter anymore. So following that, I was asked to again broaden my scope and oversee the entire company product portfolio as CPO, managing all of product management as well as UX design across the company product portfolio. And given that TomTom has over 5,000 employees, you can imagine that portfolio was quite broad. But I kept on learning new tricks. I had the honor of going through an extensive leadership training at Cambridge University, which was really cool. But probably the most impactful, and again, this was again going out of comfort zone, was to present product vision and strategy on stage in front of a real large and critical audience, like often company-wide audiences. Just being able to tell stories and to communicate strategy in front of large groups of people turned out to be, again, like, I wouldn't say a career catalyst, but it really makes you feel, again, more comfortable in more complex situations. There was a lot to love about that role, and many people in the company were and are still very dear to my heart, but it also started to itch. I got quite detached from the on-ground product work, and being under pressure from enterprise customers, automotive industry, the products also became more ingredient and platform products, and the connection to end users became less and less. And then I made quite a drastic choice. I decided to scale down my career and get close again to what I love doing most, which is building great products and inspiring products for people. And in Miro, I found a product that I got very excited about, because working on tools that fundamentally change the way people work and collaborate is just a super exciting space to be part of. So that's where I'm currently at. Just reflecting maybe back on a quarter century career. for me, the principles or the key words that help me advance have always been leadership, dedication, and accountability. So dare to take initiative and feel responsible in terms of leadership. Be dedicated, like really love what you do, and put a lot of effort in improving and learning and getting better at it, and not resting before also the final pieces are done. And lastly, be accountable, take responsibility, and never point fingers to others, right? Like always put yourself in the spot of being vulnerable and accountable for the choices that you make. So currently happening at Miro. Thanks a lot for listening to my journey, to my story, and I guess all of us are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. Thanks, Case. Um, I do see one question for Kate, and maybe, I don't know, Lynn, if you see others.
Are we going to do the Miro?
I think we'll answer the questions. I have a plenty for Case, but I believe I will schedule one-on-one with Case, regular one, to discuss all of them. Incredible journey you took, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, then I'll start with the questions. So the first question is for Kate from Dia. Referring to your presentation, could you give an example of giving direction to your direct reports instead of giving a solution?
Yeah, sure. I can provide an example of how it's going at Miro. We usually have daily design review sessions with all designers in substreams and domains. And we discuss all work in progress. And so my job is not to share the solution. My job is to help to come up with this solution. And what I do usually is sharing some historical data that I have. For example, if the team is quite new, it helps them to learn more about customers, about previous research, to figure out and prioritize directions. For example, if we already experimented with this type of onboarding flow and it didn't work well, I can share it so we can iterate and try out something different. Also, sharing information around who to ask what really helps, because the company is growing and we need to find these cross-functional interconnections with other streams. So I help team to find out who to ask what, to connect with someone, so they can co-create some stuff together. And also some stuff from the industry. For example, I'm practicing a course which is called Growth Design, and a lot of interesting stuff I find there. So I can share with the team some new learnings from this course, or some references which can also provide some direction, but not the end result and solution. Hope I answered this question.
Cool. Thanks, Kate. And the next question is for Kate. What part of Miro was the catalyst that inspired you to jump the ship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, like many, I learned about Miro when the pandemic started. Before that, it was not really on my radar, and it was just an enormous eye opener for me, because at my time at Microsoft and also at Frog Design, I did quite a lot of work around productivity and productivity applications. And in Miro, I suddenly saw, right, that this is going to change the world. Like, this is going to change how people collaborate, how you bring content, people, and communication together into one place. And that has just tremendous opportunity to just transition from this whole kind of office document paradigm of productivity to something that is much more visual and also usable for people that are maybe less visually oriented, is something that I found fascinating to be part of.
Cool, thank you for sharing. And then we have another question open to all three of you from Elise. And the age-old question, how to get a job when most companies want you to have experience. So you need experience to get experience. I can't get the first step in. Any advice here?
I have some advice, and that is really sometimes, you know, take a job below your level is one way to just get into the company that you want to get into. And, you know, maybe sacrifice salary or, you know, job title or whatever. Just get in and you'll have a chance to develop that experience.
Yeah, from my side, maybe on top of what Case said, actually don't be afraid to join with not like fancy titles, but who cares about them. Join as a junior, join as an intern if there is any opportunity, but prioritize the companies first you want to join. Like the lucky part for me was that in Perm, there was only one company I wanted to work at all. That was Real-Time Board. So I didn't have any other interviews at all. I just went there, honestly told people about my aspiration, my goal, what I want to do. And if you treat it that way, that in kind of personalized way, if you treat companies like that, they will hear you, I hope, and will have a place for you.
Cool. All right. Next question is from Michael. Can you elaborate a bit? How does Miro invest in growing design talent? Any takers for this one?
Me, actually, there is, it's related to the next question of like parallel career ladders. So like most, I would say like most sort of mature design organizations, we do have parallel career ladders for ICs and managers. And we just happen to all three of us be managers, but we do have room and roles for super senior ICs as well. And sort of that, having that path and that openness and like a product that's constantly evolving and complex in architecture, like leaves a lot of room for interesting design challenges and for people to mature and grow.
Anyone else has anything to add to this?
Yeah, to me, the best school has always been the real world. And developing is usually about you know, throwing new challenges at people, and that is I think we do that. There is no shortage of healthy challenges at Miro, as I've experienced so far. But doing that guided, right? Like have someone who understands where you're at and what is a meaningful next challenge to take on is absolutely present at the company.
Cool. All right. So did we fully answer the next question then, or from Peter? Yeah. From Tolik, do your bosses work with you on your evolution path? And do you work on it with your employees?
Yeah, I can start maybe. Honestly, I think it's like the individual responsibility first, because it's your way, it's your path as a person to understand where to go, and your manager can help you if you want. If you don't want, I'm afraid it's not like doable. So talking about the evolution path and frameworks, we don't have like predefined framework for everyone to follow. It's up for individuals to come up with the framework. For example, I use personal OKR system because I like systems. Some people use personal painted pictures, which also kind of helps. There is a collaboration around that, but usually it comes from employees, where they want to grow, what they want to do, and managers and we as leaders help them with that, definitely.
Right, let's move on to the next one. The questions keep on coming. From Ellie, hello. Does it require illustration and animation skills to get hired as a product designer at Miro?
I guess that depends. If you are in brand marketing communication, then yeah, absolutely, illustration and animation is key, because this is all about communicating our product and our brand to customers. In product design, probably a little less so. We work from a well-established and complete design system. So the designers are typically more, you call them interaction designers, problem solvers, like dealing with complexity and trying to find a path forward between many fighting and difficult constraints. That is really the core of the job of a product designer. But even there, we like designers to be as much end-to-end as possible. So have a broad skill set. So you shouldn't shy away from touching visual tools and make even your simple designs already look great. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Kees. Yeah, we're actually at time already, so let's move on. But before that, perhaps all of you could share your favorite design book with the audience.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's for design management was Multipliers. That it's a book really about thinking about how to multiply your impact by not providing solutions, but providing direction, as Kate said.
I already shared 3 books. I can't pick one because they all like made my story, and I read them like this way. First, Brené Brown, Dare to Lead, then Making of the Manager, Julie Ju, she's like awesome leader, and then Radical Candor, popular one, Kim Scott.
Yeah, speaking of not merely a design book, but one of my favorites is Radical Focus from Christina Wodke, which is a very tiny book. So you read it in an evening, but it's a fantastic story about a real life story and a more theoretical story of how you can bring focus to your work and not be distracted by many different competing requirements.
All right, thanks everyone for sharing. Kate, I'll hand it over to you for Miro.design.
Yeah, one follow-up surprise for everyone who is still there. Yeah, I want to share with you one thing and a bit of a story behind that. So a bit of a story. Some time ago, maybe 6 months ago, we sit on a one-on-one with Vlad Zelinsky, our head of design, and I don't know how, but we bought Miro.design domain for some reason. I don't know why. And then we thought, okay, we have domain, we should do something with that. And after some co-creation workshops, gathering some visuals, design critiques, review sessions, development, and so on, we have this. This is a visual story about who we are as a design team. And as you can see, we are very colorful bunch of people who create this awesome product together. And during the last year, we grew quite intensively from a small team to, I would say, a solid unit in a company with several divisions inside: design as product design, UX research, digital and brand and content design. And we also started thinking about the way how we work, what kind of values we have, what principles we follow. And also became more present in the community. Even today, we are trying to do that. As well as we collected all the case studies and personal websites and different stuff we do beyond work here to share it with the community. And If you feel like it's interesting for you, if you feel like you would like to be a part of this amazing story, we have a lot of opportunities for you, and you can explore them here on Miro.design later. And yeah, so yeah, oh no, I cannot do that. Just a sec, once again. Yeah, find Miro.design here, take a picture, and join us. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. And I think Lynn posted the link to our chat. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out an extra few minutes with us for your questions. Like Kate, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat. All right. See you guys.